Люди, которые не хотят эвакуироваться на сторону Украины, называются ждунами. С ними никто не считается и за людей не считает. То есть, допустим, вот отступает рота. Надо завалить за собой здание. Закладывается ТМК в основу. И рушится здание вместе с мирняком.
Well, friends, today is the 21st of November. I had to check. And this is going to be a bit longer because I'm going to go through the 28 points of let Russia hang itself so we can then butcher it a little bit later. Otherwise known as Trump's latest bullshit plan. Like everything that Trump comes out with, there is no honesty, no fairness, and definitely nothing that should be ever trusted. So I'm going to go point by point. Point 1. Ukraine's sovereignty will be confirmed. Ukraine is sovereign as it is. The problem is Ukraine is run by an illegal government. That's nothing more than a bunch of racketeers, mafiosos, and shysters. Oh, but wait a minute. It's not a sovereign state. It's a state controlled by the United States and by Brussels. So how will we be confirming their sovereignty? On the words of the West? Is that it? Because they're telling us constantly they're a sovereign nation, except they can decide everything for them. Yeah. So, point 1, bullshit. Point 2, a comprehensive non-aggression agreement will be concluded between Russia, Ukraine, Europe. All ambiguities of the last 30 years will be considered settled. Oh, really? Well, we hope they can get settled. Yes, sure, okay, let's have a comprehensive non-aggression agreement. Is that supposed to happen before or after everything stops? And how long will this agreement take to deliver? Because if we're going to go off of regular Western practices, we'll be doing this agreement for the next 30, 40, 50, 60, 100 years. Or until the West bankrupts itself or collapses, something else happens to it. Or we have to destroy it in a war, because that's how usually the West runs negotiations, particularly those negotiations it really doesn't want to deal with. Okay, but let's say, okay, that'll someday be settled. This is not a very horrible point. It is what Russia is demanding. It just has a point that actually has no end date to when it should be accomplished or how it will be accomplished. Okay, but maybe something could be worked out of that. Point 3. It is expected that Russia will not invade neighboring countries and NATO will not expand further. Russia will not invade neighboring countries. Let's see. What countries were those? Oh, okay. First of all, that was Georgia under Saakashvili, an American puppet, so once again, a non-sovereign entity, that attacked Russian peacekeepers and tried to genocide the Alsatians. Or it could be the Ukrainians who were massacring and had been killing Russians in eastern Ukraine for a goodly 8 years before all this started. So no, Russia cannot sign that because there may be circumstances upon which Russia has to act, like they had in Georgia and in Ukraine. And the West will create those circumstances absolutely on all sides. Guaranteed. So if Kazakhstan tomorrow goes full psycho American whore and starts sending training and sending jihadists, kind of like already being done, starts seriously sending jihadists into Russia, Russia is not supposed to protect itself? So Russia, under this plan, is supposed to surrender its sovereignty and the right to defend itself. Well, America invades everybody once because, hey, it's America. America can do whatever it wants. Team USA, that's right. Everybody else has to give up their sovereignty because, we're the hegemon of the universe. Let's move on. Am I getting too animated for you? Let's move on. It only gets better. 4. A dialogue will be held between Russia and NATO, mediated by the United States. I'm sorry, NATO is going to mediate NATO. Because without the United States, there is no friggin' NATO. So NATO is going to mediate NATO's dialogue with Russia to resolve all security issues and create conditions for de-escalation in order to ensure global security and increase opportunities for cooperation and future development. Yeah, that would be great. Let's actually choose a mediator that's actually not the main enemy, not the backbone and brains and balls of NATO. Let's think about that one. I don't know. Who could we trust? Well, not Switzerland, because they're no longer neutral. I'm sure somewhere in Latin America or in Africa or in Southeast Asia, we can find a country we can trust to mediate this. I'm positive of this. Or maybe even somebody in the Middle East who isn't either Israel's whore or America's whore via, with Israel standing somewhere in the background. But I'm sure somewhere we can find a country that we can mediate with on this dialogue. And it ain't going to be the United States. Or Trump? Yeah, okay. And we know how capricious anything that Americans say or do is. Number 5. Ukraine will receive reliable security guarantees. Oh, you mean like NATO? Article 5. Those kinds of reliable security guarantees. From whom? NATO. Okay. Who else is going to give them security guarantees? The U.S., which is NATO. Okay, so that's bloody well insane. But okay, let's move on. It's about to get better, folks. Point number 6. The size of the Ukrainian armed forces will be limited at 600,000 personnel. The Ukrainian army had 250,000 at the beginning of this, but they started counting everybody as part of the Ukrainian army. So officially they have like over 1 million, 1.5 million, but that's because they count police, emergency services, the press gangs that run around and murder and kidnap, well, preferably kidnap, but occasionally they murder the peasants to get on their front lines. So now, from all of that and inflating all of that, they get to about 1.5 million, though 1.2 million, though realistically combat forces are much, much smaller, as we can see by the front rolling westwards on a continuous basis. But with all that, they're going to shrink the army down to 600,000 active duty soldiers. And what, pray tell, does Ukraine need to have the second largest army in Europe after Russia? This would make Ukraine bigger than the self-proclaimed German Bundeswehr or Wehrmacht 2.0 that Merz plans to build at 550,000. Is this for peace? Really? Is this for peace? So they're going to have the second largest army in Europe for peace. Realistically, Ukraine needs about 100,000 troops max to keep everybody in line and keep the rest of the province that really want to leave from leaving. Maybe 200,000 at the most. But again, 600,000? So they're going to have a combined arms army sitting on the Russian border, going back to the same crap we had before, except this one is going to get a chance to recuperate. Let's see. How can we get around this? First of all, hey, you serve 3 years and you're going to be a inactive reserve, so you're no longer active duty, and we'll get the next guy in and the next guy in. And hey, let's send a few. Let's send some people over to Europe. We can have them train there, and they'll form a quote military company. Corporation or something, and we'll station them in, say, Poland or Romania, because they won't actually be part of the Ukrainian army. You think they won't do that? Or suddenly the police will no longer be Ukrainian military, but they'll train them as military. They will cheat every single which way they can, and every which way NATO and Washington, same thing, will allow them to, and which is every which way they can. So you can count 600,000, you can count that it'll be at least 1 million. And Russia would have to be butt-ass insane to sign on to this insanity. Hey, NATO agrees not... Oh, I'm sorry. Did I skip? Yes, I skipped number 7. Ukraine agrees to enshrine in its constitution that it will not join NATO, and NATO agrees to include in its statutes a provision that Ukraine will not be admitted in the future. I mean, that's nice and all that. Of course, it can all go away in a second. Ukraine had a constitution where it was neutral, then it suddenly had a constitution where it'll join NATO. Whoa, hey, look how that changed. Yes, Russia demands that, but that's not any kind of serious security point. Pieces of paper change instantly, especially in autocratic regimes like anything that NATO and the EU sets up these days. They're all police states. Prove me wrong, except, well, with the exception of the Austro-Hungarian, the former Austro-Hungarian Empire. NATO agrees not to station troops in Ukraine. Oh, okay, that's good. What about the European Army, the one that they're trying to make? Well, this would be a perfect time to suddenly transfer a lot of these NATO troops into a European army, an EU army. Is that allowed to be stationed in Ukraine? What about mercenary companies? Are those allowed to be stationed in Ukraine? Why not? Because it's not NATO officially, right? Like a lot of those mercs were killing left and right now, who are all NATO card-carrying military. I've had people contact me from a place like Fort Bragg, where I used to serve, talking about how many guys have gone over there unofficially, but officially, and didn't ever come back. And their families, I'm assuming their families are being paid off to shut the hell up. Because this is not something the U.S. government is going to admit to. How many hundreds, if not thousands, of American soldiers are dead? Like those HIMARS that got taken out. The U.S., and I'm going to call spade a spade, the American military pulled up 4 HIMARS up to the line of contact, fired off 1 ATACMS from each HIMAR, because that's all they can carry, at Voronezh. The problem with ATACMS is they're crap missiles. And the moment they try to go deep, they get shot down. The only reason they are passably useful in short-range areas is because they're fired with a packet of other missiles like Grad, rocket artillery, or Uragan rocket artillery that shoots out a mass of rockets, or missiles in this case, and rockets, and overloads any of the local anti-air systems. And that way, some of the ATACMS may get through. But when you go deep, that's only ATACMS, and none of them ever make it. But those 4 HIMARS, at least 2 of them anyways, got whacked fast. So I don't know what's their crew, 2, 3 guys? Oh, that's 2, 3 Americans and each dead. Not you ever going to hear about this. Not from the creatures that live in D.C. and sending your kids off to die somewhere. But okay. So this is ridiculous. Okay, NATO agrees not to station troops in Ukraine. That would have to be no foreign troops, including mercenary companies of any sort, are allowed to be stationed in Ukraine. That's what it would have to be. But no, this is just NATO. Because we could never have a European army or mercenary companies. Okay, so number 9, European fighter jets will be stationed in Poland. And if they're part of NATO, they're already stationed in Poland after now. So this is absolutely a mute and pointless point. This is what you call filler. Number 10, this is where it keeps getting interesting. U.S. guarantees. So Americans, you better wake the hell up, because you're about to be pushed into guarantees. The U.S. will receive compensation for the guarantee. What compensation for a guarantee? So which guarantee? We haven't even gotten to a guarantee, but the U.S., as usual, we want compensation. We don't know what the hell we're doing yet, or how deep we're going to be pulled into any sign of crap, but we want compensation. What form of compensation? How is this compensation? Compensation in property, women, children, blood, organs? Oh, the West takes all of that anyways. What exactly is this compensation? But of course, none of it is labeled. Further under point 10. If Ukraine invades Russia, it will lose the guarantee. We don't know what the guarantee is, but it will lose it, damn it. It will lose it. We will say, no guarantee for you today. You bad boy, you invaded. Good, we'll start now. If Russia invades Ukraine, in addition to a decisive, coordinated military response, all global sanctions will be reinstated, recognition of the new territory, and all other benefits of this deal will be revoked. There are no friggin' benefits of this deal, first of all. So basically, by this, you're telling that the guarantee is Article 5 of NATO. In addition to a decisive, coordinated military response. So what is America guaranteeing? It's guaranteeing America will fight Russia. Let that thing sink in. And it's guaranteeing you, all you Frenchies, Germans, Limeys, and everybody else are going to get to eat a big chunk of that shit sandwich. Because you're all going to be on the hook to under these guarantees to go fight too. This isn't going to be Macron going, maybe today, maybe not tomorrow, maybe wiggling around, as we have a saying in Russia, 5 Fridays to a week. The way women change their minds all the time. Well, that's Macron, except it's like 15 Fridays to a week. Or let's include the weekend, 21. So this is the tripwire that will make sure you or your children within the next 3 to 4 years will be dying. And this will probably go nuclear, so they're really going to be dying. But okay. Oh, and global sanctions. Well, who's going to remove those sanctions? You see, that's the thing about America in general. The presidents who are the front men, the con men, they will tell you all about how we'll sign any agreement. We guarantee we'll take care of sanctions and all this crap. They like to talk a lot of that crap, but that means absolutely nothing. Oh, we've signed agreement, and you signed it. You go ahead and start implementing, and we got to get this passed through Congress, where it'll never go anywhere, because that's the whole plan to begin with. None of this will go through Congress. None of this. You just go ahead and start, and we'll catch up. Yeah, that's right. We'll catch up. Something like that. U.S. Congress removes sanctions, not the president. And the U.S. Congress is not going to remove sanctions. It is a bought and paid for cesspool of corruption, dementia, and sadism. They are not going to remove sanctions. If anything else, it's going to only get worse. So I'm looking forward to the next round of American sanctions. Let every single country in the world have to choose: suck up to America and the USD and starve and watch revolution, civil war, or screw the US dollar. I am so looking forward to these sanctions. God bless that moron. As they say in the South, bless his heart toward Lindsey Graham, the light and the loafers moron, the rest of his, and Kennedy and the rest of these idiots. By all means, pass these sanctions. So there's nothing Trump can sign that can remove any sanctions. It's just Congress has to remove sanctions. So this is pointedly a lie. Further, under number 10, if Ukraine launches a missile at Moscow or St. Petersburg without cause, the security guarantee will be deemed invalid. Oh, you think they're not going to manufacture a cause? I mean, seriously? You think they're not going to manufacture? This whole thing is the tripwire to cause. I mean, there's guaranteed 110%. Everybody's getting, as soon as the Ukrainian army is up to speed and the Europeans have caught up, they need 2-3 years to get their industry up and get enough manpower, whether, most of these guys are going to be absolutely inexperienced, but hey, meat's meat. And they're going to be they'll be right on the border right there. They'll be stationed right up and down the border of Ukraine waiting while mercenary companies are all over Ukraine. And Ukraine's doing everything it can to falsify its 600,000. And then they'll start the war. They'll do a tripwire of some kind, something false flag. Oh, by the way, the Romanians just stopped the false flag from happening. They caught a truck that was going out of Ukraine with Moldovan drivers that had a lot of explosives in it, had a disabled Grand drone in it. Yeah, I guess nobody told them they were supposed to pass these guys so they can get their little Black Swan event going. Whoops. That was yesterday. Point 11. Ukraine is eligible for EU membership and will receive short-term preferential access to the European market while this issue is being considered. There's 2 points here. First of all, so we can't station, NATO can't station their troops but the European Union is creating its own military force, or could just, rebrand the NATO forces into the European army and station them physically there. Not only is it not prohibited directly in anything, but hey, if Ukraine is part of EU, preferential treatment of markets I love that one because, Hungary, Poland, Czech, Slovakia, you're going to get screwed. Welcome to being used. Because that cheap, GMO-laden, chemically contaminated, God only knows what's in the water right now, crops and animal products are going to be flooding your markets. And you can't stop it. If this gets signed, if it agrees upon it, for just reason alone, all you should be screaming. All your friends of Trump should be screaming, hell no. Because Trump's about to screw you so hard on this. Woo! I mean, Ursula will get behind this. Absolutely, Ursula will get behind this. Especially if she's getting her cut. You guys and your farmers, not so good for you. Actually, pretty damn bad for you. So, shall we continue? Point 12. We're not even halfway through yet from all this excitement and insanity. Point 12. A powerful global package of measures to rebuild Ukraine, including but not limited to the creation of a Ukrainian development fund to invest in fast-growing industries, including technology, data centers, and artificial intelligence. So who's going to be running this data center? Which corporations? Which corporations have bribed Trump into this because they want in on certain issues. Now, Ukraine doesn't exactly have a lot of industry left, and it never had high-tech industry to begin with. Well, it did in the 90s, but then they raided and stole everything and sold it all off. In fact, Ukraine, when it exited the Soviet Union, had an economic and technological base the size of France's. Now they make Ugandans look extremely rich in comparison to themselves before the conflict started. Second point under point 12. The United States will cooperate with Ukraine to jointly rebuild, develop, modernize, operate Ukraine's gas infrastructure, including pipelines and storage facilities. So the U.S. is going to be making money off of Ukraine's gas. That's one of the reasons, by the way, they need this war to stop right now. Because shale gas is all over that little area called Slavyansk, Krematorsk, Konstantinovka. Matter of fact, the shale fracking didn't really commence until after the conflict started in eastern Ukraine, because the local people were banning it, were blocking it, and didn't want it because it would kill the agricultural sector. Because the fracking involved in shale, the shale layer is usually not that far. It's pretty high up. And it's just below the water level layer. And all the chemicals you're pumping in to do the fracking's done on almost all wells, but shale needs a lot of fracking. And because it's not that deep, those chemicals start to percolate up right into the water table. And they poison everything up there, above them. So yeah, the locals didn't like that, but after 2014, after Slavics fell into the hands of the Ukrainian army, a lot of those locals were no longer there. They were either killed or moved out of the way, and Burisimo started fracking, and the Biden family started earning. All thanks to the deep knowledge of finance and oil field services and oil field operations of Hunter Biden, between crackheads. It's amazing. If you do enough crack, you know everything. Well, at least that's what's left of your brain thinks. It just crystallizes your brain into super knowledge. Yeah, okay. But hey, it's Hunter Biden. He's an elite. He's an American elite. He can do whatever he wants. He's a son of a scion of one of the strongest families of politicians and thus owners of America that there is. The serfs, what are the serfs going to do? Bitch and moan and complain? Come on. Gee, you didn't think Daddy was going to pardon him and everybody else before that? I mean, are you that naive? You were shocked? Seriously? We continue. Still point 12. So now we understand that U.S. is going to develop, quote, technology and industry. That is, the U.S. is going to take over the oil and gas assets of Ukraine. As limited as they are, they're going to be in U.S. hands. Not the Europeans that had been sold to previously. But anyways, joint effort to rehabilitate war-affected areas for the restoration, reconstruction, and modernization of cities and residential areas. Well, considering all the really war-torn areas are now in our hands, because that's what it took to take those territories back, that's going to be us doing it. Us reconstructing our cities, not Ukraine. In the areas that have been affected, I'm sure the U.S. is going to be taking them over afterwards, all those areas. Next point, in point 12, infrastructure development. Whatever that's supposed to mean. I mean, we know what infrastructure is. We know what development means. What exactly does infrastructure development in this case means? Who cares? It's a good filler. Makes it sound good. Extraction of minerals and natural resources. Wow, more filler. Just in case, we needed that. Because, you mean taking over the gas and those industries isn't telling you exactly what's going to be happening? The World Bank will develop a special financing package to accelerate these efforts. So the World Bank, which is financed, by the way, by everybody, including Russia, are now going to be paying for the U.S. to make money. So the World Bank is going to be taking everybody's money, shoving it into Ukraine, of course, kickbacks to the Ukrainian vassals, kickbacks to the American owners, and the U.S. is going to get to develop those areas and extract resources for itself. Yeah, okay. How do the rest of you world survivors feel about that one? Well, we go to point 13. Russia will be reintegrated into the global economy, except it never was unintegrated from the global economy. It was unintegrated from America and its whores. The failing economy of the United States, the failing economy of Canada, the failing economy of all of the European Union, the failing economy of Japan, the failing economy of South Korea, and the failing economy of Australia. Oh, so you want us to reintegrate into that so we can give you cheap oil and gas while you're, by the way, manufacturing weapons to kill us in the future with? Go pound sand. We're quite integrated into the actual world economy. The world economy doesn't need America and doesn't need Europe and doesn't need America's little whores in Eastern Asia or deep Southeast Asia, Australia, in other words. Yeah. I think we're pretty damn integrated as it is. Trade's up, everything's up. Valdai is up. The Valdai conferences are booming. Any of the other trade conferences Russia has are booming. With, by the way, American businessmen coming in incognito also. But hey, I guess we need reintegration. Next point under point 13. The lifting of sanctions will be discussed and agreed upon in stages and on a case-by-case basis. Wait, but I thought all the sanctions were going to be gone. Wasn't that previous point? Lifting of sanctions, which America will never lift, because the U.S. Congress will never lift it. I mean, come on. We're dealing with whom? The brain trust of America there? Of course they'll never lift it. But Russia will have to lift counter-sanctions, allow planes to fly across Russia, allow imports of foreign goods into Russia for dumping or whatever. Right? No. Let me think about that. No. The United States, and this is point 13 still going, next point on point 13. I'll just put it on a case-by-case basis. Yeah, okay, trust America if you really want to easier than that, just shoot yourself. How do you know American or Western politicians are lying? They're breathing. Okay, so next point under point 13. The United States will enter into a long-term economic cooperation agreement for mutual development in areas of energy, natural resources, infrastructure, artificial intelligence, data centers, rare earth metal extraction projects in the Arctic, and other mutually beneficial cooperation opportunities. Well, if you wanted to, you could be, civilized, not fight a proxy war and just go do it anyways and agree on things like that. But, that would take brains. I guess, and but then you wouldn't have the leverage. You'd have to actually come in as an honest broker. And for most American businessmen, major businessmen, and politicians, being an honest broker is like asking the devil not to lie. Next point under point 13. Russia will be invited to rejoin the G8. Why? Why do we need to be part of the club of America and her biggest vassal whores? All bankrupt. It shouldn't be the G8, it should be the D8, the debtor 8. The biggest debtors in human history are, well, not debtor 8, debtor 7. Why the hell would Russia need to join this? We're not Yeltsin to get a little pat on the head. See, Russia, you're not that bad. Now keep giving away everything. See, we'll let you into the club with the big boys. You can pick up our shit afterwards. Yeah, okay, thank you. We don't need you. We didn't suffer by not being in the G8, the G7, and we don't need to be back in it. It's like, again, this is back to America, the tradition in the U.S. of giving little beads to Indians. See, have some beads. Like, give away everything you own. Not gonna happen. So again, pointless point. Now, we go to 14, where actually some of the meat is. The meat of what America wants to steal. Point 14, frozen funds will be used as follows. Oh, this is where we get to be told how the money that was stolen from us is gonna be used. Oh, how nice. 100 billion in frozen Russian assets will be invested in US-led efforts to rebuild and invest Ukraine. Oh, we're going to steal that money now officially to, quote, reinvest in Ukraine. I mean, let's just call it what it is. We'll call it a big lawsuit in the end, but, you know, it's theft. It's American theft. So by the time any of this goes through America's pockets, Ukrainian pockets, and whoever else's pockets, I'm sure the EU is going to be out with a handout, Ukraine will get absolutely figus, nothing. But that's the usual point. But either way, the money's stolen. But don't take any vengeance because you're signing on to having your money stolen. See, we're having your signature on the fact we're stealing $100 billion from you. America, the modern America, the biggest shyster thieves the world has ever seen in history. Oh, the future history writers are going to be having a lot of fun documenting the last 100 years of America, or the last 10, 20 years or 30 years of America. Anyways, point 14, continuing. Next point under point 14. The U.S. will receive 50% of the profits from this venture. Europe will add $100 billion to increase the amount of investment available for Ukraine's reconstruction. Frozen European funds will be unfrozen. The remainder of the frozen Russian funds will be invested in a separate U.S.-Russian investment vehicle that will implement joint projects in specific areas. This fund will be aimed at strengthening the relations and increasing common interest to create a strong incentive not to return to conflict. Oh, so the U.S. is going to steal $100 billion from us, and the Europeans are going to steal $100 billion from us, and the remaining $100 billions, from which, by the way, those $200 billions, the U.S. will get 50% profit margin. Oh, the first 50% of profits. I don't say profit margin 50%. By the way, but once you finish stealing everything, there's not going to be much left to invest. But whatever invests, U.S. gets 50% of the profits. I mean, I'm telling you this with a straight face is what I'm reading. The fact that these people, these friggin' morons actually put this on this sheet of paper, well, this electronics, I guess, on this electronic sheet of paper. Somewhere I'm sure there was a sheet of paper used for all of this, and would actually bring this up as an actual rational point. We're going to steal $200 billion from you. We're going to make money off of it. You're going to agree to this. And the remaining $100 billion, we're going to invest in your country and make profit off of it. Your money. We're stealing your money, investing back in your country to make more money off of your money to take out of your country. Well, $200 billion, we're just going to steal flat out. You can't make this crap up. I mean, seriously. Mr. Trump, Rubio, tell me, how much coke were you snorting? Was it the good stuff that was supposed to go to Zelensky? You said, no, let's snort it ourselves before we come up with this idiocy. Because if you were just smoking weed, you'd never come up with this because you'd be too tired and too lazy. But obviously, you're snorting coke in huge quantities to come up with this manic crap of letters and words. So, point 15. Man, yeah, the excitement, the energy, we can just feel it. The coke ripping through our brains as we get to point 15 with 13 more points to go after this. How could this get any better? It will. I'm sure it will. Let's go on. Let's keep going. Point 15. A joint American-Russian working group on security issues will be established to promote and ensure compliance with all provisions of this agreement. How? Okay, let's just begin with it. How is it going to be set up to ensure compliance with all of this agreements? Inspections, hard inspections, audits. What are we talking about here? I mean, yeah, it's going to be a working group that's going to do absolutely nothing, meet once a year, or maybe once half a year, because I guess they probably like flying and seeing things. It's called corporate vacations, where you go do crap bit of work in a different country and have your corporation pay for it because you're quote doing work, and then you go play around in that country for a couple of days. Seen plenty of that. So again, this is pointless filler. This doesn't say anything. Point 16. Russia will enshrine in law its policy of non-aggression towards Europe and Ukraine. So now Russia has to change its laws to be passive and do nothing against continued Western aggression. Because if anybody thinks this aggression is going to go away, again, you're snorting something strong. And it's probably stronger than coke. I think it's just going straight to crack. Because I'm telling you what's going to happen, by the way. On a daily basis, there are going to be drone attacks flying over. But nobody will know where or from whom. Because there'll be Western observers. We just can't tell that it's flying east to west. Who could possibly be shooting? Maybe some Russians are shooting those. No, yeah. Oh, made in America stamp. Don't worry about that. That's probably, that's Belarusians doing it. I mean, this is what we're looking at. So Russia has to enshrine in law that it will be a passive victim for America. Yeah, okay. Yeah. So non-aggression towards Russia and Ukraine as Ukraine piles up troops on the Russian border and prepares for war. So in other words, this is don't strike first as we prepare for the big war. Just wait till we invade. Point 17. The United States and Russia will agree to extend the validity of treaties on the non-proliferation and control of nuclear weapons, including the START 1 treaty. Well, actually, there's only START 1 as far as I recall. That's all that's left. America's deep sixed every single other treaty. And it's just getting paranoid and START because it's suddenly starting to realize that it lost the arms race. It is about 20 to 30 years behind. It is such a corrupt entity, it can't get anything done. By the way, the Sentinels are supposed to replace the Minuteman. Were supposed to come out in 2030, are now aimed at 2038. And the price went from 94 billion to 135 billion. And you think it ain't going to grow some more? And you think it's going to be actually 2038? Keep smoking that crack. If that's what you believe. And how is this and nuclear treaties in any way tied to this American proxy war, American direct war, coalition war, as Macarius very correctly puts it on the Durin, as part of this coalition war against Russia? Yeah, okay. Point number 18. Ukraine agrees to be a non-nuclear state in accordance with the Treaty on the Non-Proliferation of Nuclear Weapons. Oh, wait a minute. Ukraine already agreed to that. Yeah, Ukraine already agreed to that. And then they said we're going to get nuclear weapons right before the SMO started. That was one of those things that finally was the last straw. But Ukraine had agreed to it. And so, today I agree, tomorrow I don't agree. And so, anything written by a Western politician, except maybe in blood to the devil, is a worthless piece of paper. Ask the American Indians how many treaties were broken, every single one of them. A lot of them, I think, were broken before the ink ever dried. 19. Zaporozhye nuclear power plant will be launched under the supervision of the IAEA, and the electricity produced will be distributed equally between Russia and Ukraine, 50-50. Well, first of all, it needs to be distributed how it needs to be used. Second of all, is Ukraine going to pay for that 50% electricity? Or is Russia supposed to foot the bill for feeding Ukraine as it marshals up for the next war? Yeah. Oh, no, why bother asking those questions? And since this is part of the electric grid, is America planning on getting that 50% profit off of this? And as far as the IAEA, Russia runs its own nuclear power plants just fine on its own territory, and this is Russian territory. So the IAEA has shown itself to be an absolute tool of the West, to be absolute whores that give away all the information, collect information they're not supposed to be collecting, stage events. They are absolutely discredited, like everything the West ever touches is absolutely discredited, and have no authority. Russia can run its own power plant if after the military end of this conflict and the surrender of Ukraine, whatever's left of Ukraine wants to buy electricity, or whoever takes over those territories like Poland, yeah, we can arrange something. We can definitely arrange something. But considering the other side is all Russian land that needs to be returned to Russia, Dnipropetrovsk, Nikolaevsk provinces, I think the power are probably better off going there. How about this? You stop trying to start a Chernobyl's number 2 by stop shooting at that power plant. And maybe pay for the damages you've done. 20. By the way, before anybody says that used to be Ukraine's power plant, let's explain a few points here. The Soviet Union bought that, built that, put that up. And all the debt for that, Russia paid off. Post-Soviet Union. Ukraine got that as a little present, all for free. Think about it as Reclamation Act. Point 20. Both countries undertake to implement educational programs in schools and society aimed at promoting understanding and tolerance of different cultures and eliminating racism and prejudice. Oh, that's rich. The mono state, you will be Ukrainian, speak Ukrainian, as Ukrainians redefine Ukrainian, and a Nazi, and here's your, and you will leave the Orthodox Church, the canonical Orthodox Church, either become a pagan, as it was created, as pseudo-paganism that was created by Western psychologists out of Slavic and Scandinavian myth for Azov and these other Nazi brigades. And we ban all other languages, including Hungarian, Romanian, Slovakian, Polish, are now on the same level as having to teach tolerance as Russia. Russia, while is 82% Russian, plus 2-3% Belarusian Ukrainian, which basically is the exact same people, so maybe like 84%, the remaining 16% are 180 other ethnic groups. I'm not even counting the Europeans have immigrated to Russia. I'm talking about the people who were on those lands, and those lands became part of the Russian Empire, the Russian state, 1,000 years ago, 1,500 years ago, 500 years ago, long before America was in the big process of genociding the population of the United States, the original population of the United States. So now Russia has to implement tolerance education. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Let's try to even that out. Right. Yeah. And by the way, when Ukraine's school books, who's going to check those for all the racist crap that they put in there? Well, they're not Aryans, obviously. Actual real Aryans are Indians, who are R1A haplogroup, just like Slavs. The Nazis stole the name Aryan and used it for themselves, because Germanic, I guess, wasn't good enough for them. But hey, whatever. That's a side note. Like I said, they must have been smoking or snorting some serious cocaine to be coming up with this crap. But it's not all. Because there's more points underneath point 20 than just tolerance of different cultures and eliminating racism and prejudice. By the way, does eliminating racism and prejudice mean that Russia has to give up family values? Starting implementing transgenderism, LGBTQ agenda, and all this other crap from the West? Is that what's meant underneath? Go pound sand. Next point, under point 20, same point, overall point. Ukraine will adopt EU rules on religious tolerance and the protection of linguistic minorities. Oh, that is rich. Oh, that is rich. Yeah, as the Russian population, many of whom were born second, third generation in countries like Estonia, like Oleg Beserov, who just got arrested, who was never given Estonian citizenship, even though he was second generation born in Estonia, speaks perfect Estonian, was able to pass the exam, but still had a great passport because he's a Russian. The Russian Orthodox Church that is being persecuted in those three Baltic republics, the Nazi SS parade sponsored, veteran parades sponsored by the governments of all three countries every year. Oh yeah, let's talk about the EU documents on human rights and religious tolerance and linguistic minorities. Right. Yeah. You know, I mean, it's obvious Trump and his bunch, they're just taking us for being stupid apes. Just white stupid apes in this case. I mean, it's one point after another that's just insulting to one's own intelligence. But maybe to Trump, I mean, I don't know how much Trump even knows about any of this. Because he is a relatively ignorant man. And the people around him are mostly ignorant people. They're devious, they're evil, they're malicious, they're greedy, they're power hungry, but mostly they're ignorant, but very arrogant. Going further, because, those 2 points aren't enough. Both countries will agree to abolish all discriminatory measures and guarantees the rights of Ukrainian and Russian media and education. Well, that's interesting because in Russia, Ukrainian schools do still exist. Granted, they're mostly empty because most of the people who have been getting shelled by Ukraine really don't give a damn about that language anymore, or that dialect of Russian, that extremely perverted dialect of Russian. They don't want to learn in those schools. I don't know why. And as soon as the people in any of those areas get out from underneath Ukraine, they really don't want to learn in Ukrainian anymore. But Russia does offer Ukrainian. It has a Ukrainian culture center in the middle of Moscow. It stands mostly empty. All the monuments to Ukrainians have not been torn down. Oh, wait a minute. Can we say the same thing about Russian monuments to Russians in Ukraine? No, they're all gone. Oh, or Poland, they're all gone. Everywhere else, they're all gone. But we have to be on your level. Let's be on your level, huh? Do you really want that? Oh, of course not. All Nazi ideology and activities must be rejected and prohibited. Well, you better talk to your vassals over there, your crackhead buddies in Ukraine. Because the only Nazi ideology is their Nazi ideology. Bandera is their father of their country, the mass murdering psychopath. The day of the founding of Una Unza is the day of the day of the military birthday of the military of Ukraine. And by the way, a Jewish president signed all that. Because, since they have a Jewish president, they can't possibly be Nazi. Because, I'm sorry, is Nazism limited strictly to one ethnic group called Germans? No. It's an ideology. You go down to Israel, you see that ideology quite at effect. So it doesn't really matter what the person's nationality is. Anybody could be a Nazi. You just have to have your ideology over somebody else's or somebody else's racial group. But we'll ignore all this. Yeah, you have to basically ignore 99% of this to have any chance of it ever succeeding. Point 21. Territories. Now this gets juicy. Crimea, Lugansk, and Donetsk will be recognized as de facto Russian, including by the United States. Well, whether you recognize it or not, we don't really give a damn because they are Russian, not de facto Russian. They are absolutely Russian. The people voted there, and they are part of our territory. Oh, by the way, so is Kherson and Zaporozhye. Let's move on to the second part of point 21 under territories. Kherson and Zaporozhye will be frozen along the lines of contact, which will mean de facto recognition along the line of contact. Sorry, the Russian Constitution doesn't work on your de facto anything. The entirety of those territories was accepted into the Russian Federation. They are entirely Russian land. We will take that back. Russia will relinquish other agreed territories it controls outside the 5 regions. So Ukrainians don't have to relinquish what's left of Kherson and Zaporozhye. But we have to leave Kharkov. We have to leave the portion of Kharkov, the portion of Sumy, and the portion of Dnipropetrovsk that we now control. Right. Yeah, okay. The reason they're doing all this, by the way, is because the next step, if this ever got signed, would start to move the media inside of Russia to try to start a civil war. See, Vladimir Vladimirovich Putin betrayed you. See, he's a traitor. Start killing each other. They're doing this to make a substantial foundation for propaganda to try to destroy Russia internally. And then start the big war if Russia ever falls into that trap. This is all about the destruction of Russia. There is not a single thing here said that is anything for actual long-term peace. It's for American profits and positions for the next war and chances for America to use as propaganda against Russia's government and society. Because the next thing they're going to tell the other people is, see, you're betting Russia is going to come save you. See, they betrayed you. You can't trust those Russians. Nobody can trust those Russians. That propaganda will be flooding the world. Guaranteed. Guaranteed. How about this? How about counter proposal? With foreign observers, not American, non-European, foreign observers, it could be non-Russian too, non-Belarus, every one of those territories, Kherson, Zaporozhye, Dnipropetrovsk, I'm sorry, not Kherson, Zaporozhye, those are Red Russia, Dnipropetrovsk, Poltava, Kharkov, Sumy, Kyiv, Odessa, Nikolaev. Let them have referendums. Where would they rather be? Part of Russia or part of Ukraine? Let's see what the people say. Now, this is never going to happen. But I think we're going to arrange those on the territories we already control. Look, the point here is Trump is desperate because the Russian army is creeping up on Zaporozhye city. Orekhovo is already being surrounded and being in the process of already being worked on. Gulay Pole is basically the Russian army is almost with the fall of these villages in the east. The Russian army is plumped up right against it right now, right up against it. So the Ukrainians, and it's being surrounded from the north very steadily. So the city is about 60% surrounded. At the rate that's going, within the next month to 2 months, it's gone. And then the whole of Zaporozhye falls very, very quickly. Because it's the last 3 major fortified areas. The Russian army is already has penetrated into the edges of Kherson city across the Dnieper. Donetsk is what's left of Donetsk Oblast that's in Ukrainian hands is shrinking very, very quickly. 3, 4, 5 villages a day. There are just not that many villages left. Kupinsk is now ours. That's Kharkov region, by the way. They know this is their times right now. They're going to have no leverage, 0 leverage, very, very soon, sooner than later, by all means. This is where they're desperate. And this is desperate to contain these positions that allow them to prepare for the next war, B, allow them to do the propaganda work against Russia, both internally and externally. But it gets better. I know you're going, God, will this ever end? Oh, we're only on point 21, ladies and gentlemen. We still have 7 more. So, next for the last point under 21 territories, Ukrainian forces will withdraw from the part of Donetsk Oblast that they currently control, and this withdrawal zone will be considered a neutral demilitarized buffer zone. Internationally recognized as territory belonging to the Russian Federation, Russian forces will not be able to enter the demilitarized zone. So wait a minute, so Russia has to spit on its own constitution and say, this is the Russian land, but our soldiers aren't allowed on Russian land. But we're winning this war. America's bankrupt. The European Union is bankrupt. They're on the edge of civil wars all over the European Union. And we have to give this up. We have to surrender a chunk of our land into basically a no man's zone of Ukrainian diversionary action, Ukrainian criminal action that's going to be crawling right across, passing right through the Ukrainian military without anybody noticing, and we're not allowed to be in our own territory. You can't make this crap up. Oh, but they did. They did. Now, we shall continue. Point 22. After agreeing on future territorial arrangements, both the Russian Federation and the Ukraine undertake not to change these arrangements by force. Any security guarantees will not apply in the event of a breach of this commitment. Okay, so Russia don't do anything, stay out of your own areas while we're still preparing for war. Let's not forget that. And when the people in those regions rebel and say we don't want to be part of the kleptocracy and being slaves for the next 10 generations to the American banker, who's taking, by the way, everything out of our lands, we want to be part of Russia. Oh, you can't help them as we massacre and murder them. Just so we understand that correctly. 23. We're getting there. 23. Russia will not prevent Ukraine from using the Dnieper River for commercial activities, and agreements will be reached on free transport of grain across the Black Sea. You know, if it was peacetime, okay. But by the way, with Russia controlling Kherson, and we will be controlling Kherson, anything passing down the Dnieper will still be paying us for passage. Because now they're passing not just down some middle lane, and they're staying on their side of the middle of the river, they'll be passing fully through Russian land. So I see problems with that. Pay a toll, baby, pay a toll. America loves tolls and tariffs. They should be able to appreciate that. 24. A humanitarian committee will be established to resolve outstanding issues. A humanitarian committee full of humanitarians. Yeah, we saw that with OSCE as they were spying on the on the rebels in eastern Ukraine and giving out coordinates, what humanitarian means by Western standards. All remaining prisoners and bodies will be exchanged on an all-for-all basis. Okay, sure, fine, take the bodies. They're not going to take the bodies because then they can't list them. They can't get the money off of them anymore, and then they have to admit to the casualties. All civilian detainees and hostages will be returned, including children. Yeah, how about the 120 plus Russians that are still being held in Sumy, hostages from Kherson? Oh, don't you remember those? A family reunification program will be implemented. Family reunification program of whom? The hostages taken? Sure, give them over. We'll reunify those. We don't need an extra program. We'll just take them back to their families. As far as any children that were evacuated, that were not given over by their parents to be evacuated, there were some from orphanages, we've been reunifying them with their families for the last 2.5 years. They were even flown down to Egypt to be in a neutral area and given over. That was a couple months ago. Yeah, by the way, out of those 300 billion and 60,000 that that Graham and the rest of and Bacon and the rest of these morons have come up with as numbers. The actual like 360 that Ukraine could actually come up with, like 120 of them were found in Germany. How many more were in Germany and have been sold off for organs or pedophile rings? Measures will be taken to alleviate the suffering of the victims of the conflict. Yeah, we take measures. What they're actually saying by measures is compensation. Russia pay compensation. Considering the vast majority of the murdered civilians, because they all get listed as Ukrainian, but the vast majority of the murdered civilians in this conflict are Russians, either on the Russian side of former Ukraine or deeper on old Russian territory. Who's going to compensate for that? Let's sue the American companies and the German companies that created the weapons that killed these civilians. Let's sue the American generals that picked out the targets, whose American soldiers then fired those HIMARS. Let's sue them. They make their millions on television or think tanks or on corporate boards. Well, I think they can afford to share to alleviate some of the suffering they caused by following illegal orders. But oh, that's right. If you don't follow legal orders, according to Trump, that's sedition and punishable by the death penalty. The dictator has spoken. They keep murdering people on boats, too. Ukraine will hold point 25. But we'll go back to point 24, that last part, in a minute, because it gets better. Point 25, Ukraine will hold elections in 100 days. Okay. By the way, any observers, non-American, non-European observers to those elections? Yeah, thought so. Point 26, all parties involved in this conflict will receive full amnesty for their actions during the war and agree not to make any claims or consider any complaints in the future. So the U.S. generals and all the U.S. mercs and all the other murderers and all the Nazis in the Ukrainian regime and all the mass murdering psychopaths that are the West, they get amnesty. Ain't gonna work that way, baby. Each one of those people has their date to meet Jesus. That's all I can say on that. So that's back to that last point under point 24. Measures will be taken to alleviate the suffering of the victims of the conflict. They'll all be victims of the conflict before this is over. All these mass murdering psychopaths have killed thousands of people in Kursk Oblast. Women, children, old people. All the bastards that for 13 years now, in places like, in places up and down, up and down the front lines, places like Gorlovka, Yasanovata. They've been flying their drones into people's apartments. Tell me they didn't know who they're killing. All these bastards are going to get amnesty. Ain't going to happen. I'm sure by amnesty they also mean release all the Nazi Azov and all these other POWs that are now being held in Russia, being tried humanely, because they all deserve the death penalty. Every single last one of those little bastards deserves a rope, or a fire squad, or just a bonfire. But under this little thing, we'd have to let them all go because they're all amnesty now. Ain't gonna happen. Point 27. This agreement will be legally binding. Its implementation will be monitored and guaranteed by the Peace Council, headed by the chief war criminal himself, Donald J. Trump. And sanctions will be imposed for violations. So the main war party in this proxy coalition war against Russia, the main leader of this war party, who's proud that he armed Ukraine back in 2017, just didn't get a chance to get this war going. That honor fell to Biden, is going to be the one who's going to be heading the Peace Council. This is a moronic insult to human intelligence that they try to pass in Gaza, where the Israelis and the Americans will be heading the Peace Council for the people of Gaza that have suffered, have had 400,000 people genocided by the Israeli regime, with the American regime's arming of them. Yeah, okay. Again, if you trust Donald J. Trump, you're snorting something hard. And if you trust that when he's gone, the next person over is going to be any better, you're snorting even more. You need to really cut back. But thankfully, at the end of all of this, we come to point 28. And we kill everything. Because point 28, no matter what, is going to make sure none of these other points will ever should be even discussed. Why? Because once all parties agree to this memorandum, a ceasefire will take effect immediately after both sides retreat to agreed on points to begin implementation of the agreement. The memorandum and agreements, they're not the same thing. A memorandum of intent is basically what this is at best. There's no agreement. An agreement is for everything that they lay it on. And this would be something that would take at least a few years to beat out into any kind of form, be hundreds of pages long, would have to be agreed upon through monotonous and very intense negotiations, and eventually signed. This is just basically all the bullshit on top of a cake of ceasefire, so we can rearm the Ukrainians. Thank you, Donald Trump. Thank you for killing the rest of that with one bold strike on point 28. The war will continue, and we will destroy your proxies and any NATO troops you send in there. Have fun. God bless. It's over. Well, this is over. The rest, as they say, it's all over but the dying. God bless.